Hey, if you sell homeowners insurance and you're getting a lot of pushback about having a higher deductible, then watch this video, because at the end, you're gonna be able to handle it like a pro, close a ton of business regardless of what the deductible is. The reason that we're recording this is because we had an agent recently reach out and he said, hey, I'm going through a rough patch here. My state just increased our minimum deductible from 1% to 2%. How am I supposed to handle that? A lot of states are moving in this direction. A lot of companies are moving in this direction. So it's important that you know how. And we went through this exact situation twice over the last few years. So initially it went from, we could offer a 1% and they bumped it up to a 1.5%. So we couldn't offer lower than that. And then it went from 1.5% to 2%, and we couldn't offer lower than a 2% in certain areas. And we got a lot of pushback, right? And we were a little bit rattled at first because people can get upset about that stuff, but we developed a process. We got creative on how to handle this objection and make it really, really easy to go through. And that's what I'm gonna show you here. So on the board here, we have pretty much 5 steps on this process. And the first thing you'll see there is confidence. And what I want to stress to you is that have confidence when you're explaining the deductible. So something to understand is that this isn't a make it or break it type of situation. If you go into the conversation with that mindset and you're like, oh man, I know that they're gonna have a hard time with the deductible, they're gonna give me a lot of objections and I'm not gonna be able to close it, it's gonna be such a tough time, then that's exactly what's gonna happen. But if you go into it with confidence, you'll find that it's much easier to talk about, and a lot of times you can handle it up front. They won't even give you an objection if you just say it with confidence, what the deductibles are. So that's the first thing, and none of this other stuff works if you're not confident when talking about it. So keep that in mind. Now, what we want to do if they do bring it up and say, hey, I have a lower deductible, why can't you give me that? We want to acknowledge and agree. And just a little context here. In our agency, in our area, we have 3 deductibles. They're split up. So we have a wind and hail deductible, right? We have a hurricane deductible, and we have an all other perils deductible. Now, the hurricane in our area doesn't matter as much. We don't get into a lot of dialogue about that because we're in northern Texas. So not a lot of hurricanes. But if you're in the coastal area, you might have that, and you can use the same process around that. For us, the big killer is the wind and hail. So the way we build the policy is we have all others at 1%, and we have wind and hail at 2%, because that's the best we can do. So when the prospect says, hey, I have a lower deductible, why can't you give me the 1%? We acknowledge and agree. Okay, we say, hey, definitely understand that you want a lower deductible, and you will have a 1% deductible on what we call all other perils. So that's that second step. You will have a 1% deductible on all other perils. So if your home burns down, or if someone breaks in, vandalizes, steals from you, that's all 1%, okay? Now in your area, our company does require a 2% deductible only for wind and hail. So that's the only time you're gonna have a 2% deductible. Everything else is a 1% deductible, okay? Now, listen to how I phrased that. I'm not highlighting the 2%, right? What am I highlighting? The 1%. So in our area, our company does require a 2% deductible, but that's only on wind and hail, okay? Only on windstorms, hailstorms. Everything else is gonna be a 1% deductible. If they have a problem with that further and they keep drilling on it, that's when we go into justifying the higher deductible. And there's really 2 different ways that you can take this, okay? So the first way is we talk about the quickness to pay out claims and the hassle-free process. So what we say is, hey, most people do choose a slightly higher deductible because typically they're not gonna file a claim unless something major happens. So if a bad hailstorm does come through and you need to replace your roof, most people would agree that it doesn't matter whether you pay a 1% deductible or a 2% deductible, as much as who's gonna pay out quicker and not hassle you for every little detail. Okay, so our company, the reason people like to work with us is because we pay out claims really, really quick, and we don't hassle you on every little, thing when it comes to the claim. And then we move on, okay? We don't dwell on this objection, we just move on right to the next thing. So that's one way you can handle it. The other way you can handle it is if you're covering the roof, in this case wind and hail, if you're covering the roof at replacement cost, RCV, then you can speak to that, okay? So we first talk about the speed of the claim and the hassle-free process, but then we can go over and say, hey, also, in most cases, we're actually going to pay out more as a claim because we're going to cover you under replacement costs. So we're not going to take into account the depreciation or the age of the roof or anything like that. Once you satisfy that deductible, we cover every penny above that. In most cases, you can handle it with one of these two routes, okay? Either speed of claims and hassle-free or replacement cost over actual cash value. So this is the process here. It might sound like a lot, but the more you practice it, the better you get. And use this on your calls and you will see the results. Now, this is just one objection response of 13 closing objections and 15 opening objections that we have inside of the Insurance Sales Lab training platform. And we have a script from A to Z, from start to finish, from hello to collecting payment info on a personal line sales call. We also have life insurance training, commercial insurance training for the sales team. Now, if you're an agency owner, we have training for you. So if you want to know how to run a high producing and profitable insurance agency, we can help for that. If you want to streamline a lot of the activity that goes on in the agency and make your life easier and make everybody else's life better, we can help with that. Just go to insurancesaleslab.com and become a member today.